At 11:47 p.m., a woman worth $200 million whispered 6 words that would change 2 lives forever. Please, just make it fast. Blood soaked through her designer coat as a janitor removed his jacket and revealed something nobody expected to see. What happened next left an entire city speechless. The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Medical Center hummed through the midnight silence. Daniel Rivers pushed his cleaning cart down the empty corridor, the wheels squeaking against polished floors that reflected his dark face like a mirror he'd stopped looking into years ago. 42 years old, hands scarred from holding broken things together, a maintenance worker's uniform that smelled like industrial cleaner and forgotten dreams. Nobody saw him. That's how Daniel preferred it. His shift ended at 6 a.m. 7 hours of mopping floors, emptying trash bins, and making sure the hospital looked perfect for people who'd never know his name. $12.50 an hour. Enough to keep the lights on in their small apartment. Enough to put food on the table for his daughter. Just barely enough. At 11:45 p.m., Daniel sat in the empty break room with instant coffee gone cold. In his calloused hands, he held a piece of folded notebook paper. He opened it carefully, like it might break. Inside was a drawing, crayon marks in purple and gold, a tall man with brown skin wearing a gray uniform. Next to him, a little girl with black hair in neat cornrows. Above them, a crooked rainbow. At the bottom, in careful 7-year-old handwriting, "My daddy is the best." Zoe had given it to him that morning before school. She'd stood on her tiptoes to reach his face and kissed his cheek, her breath smelling like the strawberry toothpaste he bought on sale. Daniel folded the paper back up and placed it in his chest pocket, right over his heart. The radio clipped to his belt crackled to life, sharp, urgent. Maintenance to emergency entrance. Now, emergency entrance, now. Daniel stood. He didn't run, running scared people. But his stride was long and purposeful, the walk of someone who knew what emergency meant. When he pushed through the doors, cold October air hit his face first. Then he smelled it. Blood. A silver luxury sedan sat crooked near the ambulance bay, front end crumpled like paper. The driver's door hung open. 2 paramedics were pulling someone from the back seat. A woman, unconscious. Her expensive wool coat was dark and wet from shoulder to waist. One paramedic shouted over his shoulder, "Where's the trauma surgeon?" A young nurse stood near the entrance, phone pressed to her ear, panic in her voice. "He's in emergency surgery, 15 minutes minimum." The paramedic swore. They lifted the woman onto a stretcher and rushed her through the automatic doors. Daniel followed. Inside, under harsh white light, he saw her clearly. Late 30s, dark blonde hair matted with sweat, skin pale as paper, lips colorless. Her eyes flickered open, unfocused and rolling. The nurse leaned over her, trying to stabilize her. "Ma'am, stay with us. Help is coming, just hold on." The woman's hand shot out and grabbed the nurse's wrist. Her grip was weak, trembling like a dying bird. Her voice came out in a whisper, cracked and desperate. "Please just make it fast. I don't want to feel the pain anymore." The nurse looked at the paramedic. He shook his head. "We need to stop this bleeding now or she's gone." Daniel stepped forward. His voice was calm, low, steady. "I'm trained, let me help." The paramedic turned, eyes flicking to Daniel's gray maintenance uniform, then to his face. You're a janitor." Daniel didn't argue. He pulled off his jacket and draped it over the woman's chest. Then he rolled up his sleeves. On his dark forearm, faded ink became visible. Numbers, a unit designation, military markings that told a story he never spoke about. The paramedic saw it. His expression changed. He stepped aside. Daniel moved quickly. He pressed both hands to the wound, applying pressure with the heel of his palms. Blood welled up between his fingers, warm and slick. He didn't flinch. "Get me gauze, elevate her legs now." The The nurse handed him sterile pads. He packed the wound with practiced precision. His movements were automatic muscle memory from another life. The woman's breathing was shallow, her pulse weak under his fingertips. He checked her pupils, one dilated, and tilted her head back to clear her airway. He spoke to her, his voice calm and sure. "You're going to make it. Stay with me. Just stay with me." Her eyes found his. For 1 second they focused. She stared at him like she was trying to remember something important. Then the trauma surgeon burst through the doors. "I've got it from here." Daniel stepped back. He wiped his hands on a towel someone handed him and watched as they wheeled her into the trauma bay. The doors swung shut. Silence returned. The paramedic clapped him on the shoulder. "You saved her life, man." Daniel didn't respond. He picked up his jacket from the floor, shook it out, and walked back to his cleaning cart. By the time his shift ended, the sun was rising. Daniel clocked out, changed into his street clothes, and drove home in a 15-year-old sedan with a cracked tail light. Zoe was already awake when he walked through the door. She sat at the small kitchen table in her pajamas, working on a math worksheet. Her brown eyes lit up when she saw him. "Hi, Daddy." He kissed the top of her head, her cornrows soft against his lips. "Morning, baby girl." She pointed to the paper in front of her. "Look, I finished all the problems." He sat down next to her and checked her work. Every answer was correct. Something tightened in his chest, pride mixed with something heavier. Fear, maybe, fear that he wasn't enough for her, fear that one day she'd realize how small their life was. "You're too smart for me," he said softly. She laughed. "No, I'm not." He made her breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast. They ate together in the small kitchen with morning light streaming through the window. She told him about school, about her best friend Mia, about the art project they were making together. He listened to every single word. When it was time to walk her to the bus stop, she held his hand. She was getting older now, 2nd grade, but she still reached for him. He never told her to stop. After the bus pulled away, he went back inside and collapsed onto the couch. Sleep came fast, dreamless. 4 days passed. Daniel worked his shifts, walked Zoe to school, helped with homework, made dinner, read stories until she fell asleep. Then he saw her again. Daniel was emptying a trash bin near the main lobby when he noticed a woman standing by the information desk. She wore a sharp black blazer and heels that clicked against the tile. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She looked nothing like the dying woman on the stretcher, but it was her. Daniel kept walking, head down. He had no reason to stop. But she saw him. Her eyes locked onto him across the lobby. He felt it. He turned the corner and disappeared down the hallway. 20 minutes later, his supervisor called him into the office. "Rivers, you've got a visitor." Daniel frowned. "Who?" His supervisor gestured toward the window. Outside stood the woman from the emergency room. Daniel stepped out. She turned to face him. "You're the one who helped me." It wasn't a question. He nodded once. She studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she extended her hand. "I'm Rachel Sinclair." Daniel looked at her hand but didn't take it. "I know who you are." Her jaw tightened. She lowered her hand. "Then you know I don't leave debts unpaid." Daniel's voice stayed level. "You don't owe me anything." Rachel stared at him, something flickering in her eyes. Confusion, maybe irritation. "I'd like to do something for you. Compensation, recognition, whatever you need." Daniel shook his head. "I don't need anything." Her voice sharpened. "Everyone needs something." He met her gaze, his tone unchanged. "I just need you to live better than you were that night." For the first time, she had nothing to say. Daniel turned and walked away. He didn't look back. Rachel stood in the hallway for a long time. Then she left. But she didn't forget. Before we continue with what happened next, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and leave a comment telling us what you think so far. Your support means everything. Now, back to the story. Rachel Sinclair didn't sleep anymore. She used to be proud of that. 5 hours sharp. No dreams. No interruptions. Just efficient rest that powered her through 18-hour workdays and back-to-back acquisitions. But now, every time she closed her eyes, she saw the emergency room ceiling, the fluorescent lights, the taste of copper in her mouth, and the face of a man she didn't know, his strong hand steady and sure, telling her she was going to make it. She hated that she remembered it so clearly. 3 weeks had passed since she'd tried to thank him. 3 weeks since he'd walked away like she hadn't just offered him everything most people spent their lives chasing. Money, recognition, access to power. He'd refused it all. Rachel sat in her corner office on the 38th floor, staring at a merger contract she should have signed an hour ago. The city stretched below her, a grid of glass and ambition. She'd built an empire here, a financial consulting firm worth $200 million. She knew how to win, how to take control, how to make people need her more than she needed them. But Daniel Rivers hadn't needed anything, and that disturbed her more than the accident itself. Her assistant knocked and entered without waiting. "The charity gala is tonight. Car arrives at 7. Rachel glanced at the clock. It was already 5:30. "Fine." The assistant hesitated. "Also, the hospital called. They want you as keynote speaker. They'd like you to talk about your recovery." Rachel's jaw tightened. "I didn't agree to that." "They said it would be good optics, show vulnerability, relatability." Rachel looked up sharply. "I don't need to show anything." The assistant nodded quickly and left. Rachel leaned back in her chair. She knew what they wanted, a story, a narrative, the CEO who survived, the woman who came back stronger. It was good PR, it always was. But she hadn't come back stronger, she'd come back afraid. At 7:15 p.m., Rachel stepped out of a black town car in front of St. Mary's Medical Center. The building was illuminated for the event. Banners stretched across the entrance. Inside, the main atrium had been transformed. White linens, crystal glasses, a string quartet playing near silent auction tables. Donors in evening wear mingled under chandeliers that cost more than most people earned in a year. Rachel moved through the crowd with practiced ease. She smiled, shook hands, thanked people for their generosity. But tonight she couldn't focus. Her eyes kept scanning the room. Then she saw him. He stood near the back, just outside the main floor. He wore the same gray maintenance uniform. His hands were clasped behind his back. He wasn't watching the guests, he was watching the exits. Rachel's breath caught. Halfway through dinner, someone collapsed. It happened fast. An older man sitting 2 tables away clutched his chest and pitched forward. His wife screamed. People jumped up, chairs scraped against the floor. Someone shouted for a doctor. Then Daniel was there. He moved through the crowd like water, calm, unrushed. He knelt beside the man, loosened his tie, checked his pulse, tilted his head back. He started compressions. The room went silent, except for the sound of Daniel counting under his breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. His hands moved in steady rhythm, pressing down on the man's sternum with controlled force. Someone ran up with a defibrillator. Daniel took it without looking up, attached the pads, stepped back. Clear. The man's body jerked, nothing. Daniel checked again, started compressions again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rachel couldn't look away. The man gasped, his eyes fluttered open. Daniel helped him onto his side, keeping him stable. Paramedics arrived moments later. Daniel stood, wiped his hands on his pants, and stepped back into the crowd. No one stopped him, no one asked his name. He just disappeared. Rachel found him 20 minutes later, outside, near the loading dock, alone. He was leaning against the brick wall, arms crossed. His uniform was wrinkled. There was a smudge on his sleeve. He looked up when she approached. Rachel stopped a few feet away. "You did it again." Daniel glanced back toward the building. "He'll be fine." Rachel shook her head. "That's not what I meant." He looked at her then, really looked at her. She took a breath. "I need to know something." He waited. "Why are you here? You were a combat medic. I looked you up. You have a Bronze Star. You saved lives in war zones, and now you're working maintenance for minimum wage. Why?" Daniel's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed even. "That was a long time ago." Rachel stepped closer. "So what happened? Why aren't you doing what you were trained to do?" Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked past her toward the parking lot. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. "Because I have a daughter, and she needs me more than anyone else does." Rachel felt something crack open inside her chest. She wanted to say something, apologize maybe. But Daniel was already walking away. That night Rachel sat alone in her penthouse. The city glittered below, endless and indifferent. She poured a glass of wine and didn't drink it. She kept thinking about what he'd said. "She needs me more than anyone else does." It was such a simple answer, so clear. And it made her feel small. Because Rachel didn't have anyone who needed her like that. She had employees, investors, a PR team. But no one who would care if she came home late. No one who drew pictures of her in crayon. She'd built everything she had, and it had cost her everything else. The guilt settled in slowly, heavy and cold. After the accident, she'd made sure his name stayed out of the press. She didn't want questions. Didn't want the optics of a black maintenance worker saving a white CEO. It didn't fit the narrative. So she buried it. And now she realized what that meant. She'd taken credit for her own survival, let people call her strong, resilient, a fighter. But she wasn't any of those things. She was a coward. And Daniel Rivers knew it. The next morning, Rachel called an emergency meeting with her communications team. They gathered in the conference room, laptops open, coffee in hand. She stood at the head of the table. "I need to make a statement." Her PR director looked up. "About what?" Rachel's voice was firm. "About the accident, about who really saved me." The room went quiet. Her PR director set down his pen. "Rachel, we've already moved past that. The narrative is set. You don't need to." Rachel cut him off. "I'm not asking for advice. I'm telling you what's happening." He stared at her. "This is a mistake." Rachel met his gaze. "Maybe, but it's mine to make." 2 days later, Rachel stood in front of a wall of cameras. Reporters filled the room, notebooks ready, microphones clustered on the podium. She took a breath. 4 weeks ago, I was in a car accident. I was brought to St. Mary's Medical Center in critical condition. The trauma surgeon was delayed. I didn't think I was going to survive. She looked directly into the nearest camera. But I did, because a man named Daniel Rivers saved my life. The room erupted in questions. Rachel held up a hand. "He's a maintenance worker at the hospital. He's also a decorated combat medic, and when no one else could help me, he stepped in. He didn't ask for recognition. He didn't ask for anything, and I never gave him credit." Her voice cracked slightly, but she kept going. "I let people believe I survived on my own, that I was strong enough to pull through. But the truth is, I would have died that night if it wasn't for him, and I owe him everything." She looked down at her hands. "I'm sorry it took me this long to say it." The press conference ended. Rachel walked off stage and didn't look back. Daniel saw it on the television in the hospital break room. He was sitting alone, eating a sandwich Zoe had packed for him that morning. The news was playing on the wall-mounted screen. He wasn't paying attention until he heard his name. He looked up. Rachel's face filled the screen. She was speaking into a microphone, her voice steady and clear. "A man named Daniel Rivers saved my life." Daniel set down his sandwich. Zoe was at the table with him. She'd come to visit after school, the way she did sometimes. She was coloring in a notebook, her tongue poking out in concentration. She looked up at the screen. "Daddy, is that you?" Daniel didn't answer, he just stared. Rachel kept talking. She told the whole story, the accident, the emergency room, the way he'd refused her thanks, the way she'd buried his name, and then she apologized. Zoe tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy." Daniel looked down at her. Her eyes were wide and bright. "You're a hero." He swallowed hard. His throat felt tight. "I'm just someone who did his job." Zoe shook her head. "No, you're a superhero." She held up her notebook. On the page was another crayon drawing. A tall man with brown skin in a gray uniform. A little girl with black hair in cornrows. And now, standing next to them, a woman in a fancy dress. Daniel's chest ached. He pulled Zoe into a hug. She wrapped her arms around his neck and squeezed tight. On the screen, Rachel finished her statement and walked away. For the first time in a long time, Daniel felt seen. The phone started ringing at 5:00 a.m. Daniel ignored the first two calls. By the third, Zoe was awake, standing in the doorway in her pajamas. "Daddy, your phone won't stop." He checked the screen. 12 missed calls, 18 text messages, all from numbers he didn't recognize. He scrolled through a few. "Is this Daniel Rivers? We'd like to interview you. Channel 9 News wants your story. Offering $40,000 for an exclusive interview." He turned off his phone. Over the next week, the calls didn't stop. Reporters showed up at the hospital. A camera crew waited outside his apartment building. Someone left a business card under his windshield wiper with a note. "Let's talk. 7 figures." Daniel threw it away. He kept his head down, worked his shifts, walked Zoe to school, helped with homework. But everywhere he went, people were watching, pointing, whispering. At the hospital, his supervisor called him into the office. "Rivers, we've got a situation." Daniel sat down. "What kind of situation?" The supervisor leaned back in his chair. "You're a distraction. People are coming here just to see you. We've had news vans in the parking lot all week. Administration is concerned." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I'm just doing my job." The supervisor nodded. "I know, but they're asking me to put you on leave until this calms down." Daniel stared at him. "You're suspending me." The supervisor held up a hand. "Paid leave, just for a week or two. Let things settle." Daniel stood. "I need this job." The supervisor looked uncomfortable. "I know, but it's not my call." Daniel left without another word. That night, someone knocked on his door. Daniel opened it. Rachel Blake stood on the other side. No suit, no heels, just jeans and a plain sweater. Her hair was down. She looked tired. "Can I come in?" He stepped aside. She walked past him into the small living room. Zoe was at the kitchen table coloring. She looked up and stared. Rachel gave her a small smile. "Hi." Zoe didn't smile back. She looked at her dad. Daniel walked over and put a hand on her shoulder. "Zoe, this is Rachel. She's the woman from the news." Zoe's eyes went wide. "The one you saved." Rachel nodded. "That's right." Zoe studied her for a long moment, her brown eyes serious. Then she went back to her coloring. Daniel gestured toward the couch. Rachel sat down. He stayed standing. She looked up at him. "I'm sorry." Daniel crossed his arms. "For what?" Rachel's voice was quiet. "For all of it. For putting you in this position. For making your life harder. I thought I was doing the right thing by telling the truth. but I didn't think about what it would cost you." Daniel didn't respond right away. Finally, he sat down in the chair across from her. "Why are you here?" Rachel took a breath. "Because I want to make it right." Daniel shook his head. "You can't. What's done is done." Rachel leaned forward. "Maybe, but I can try." She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. She set it on the coffee table between them. "I'm starting a foundation, the Lifeline Initiative. It's focused on emergency medical training for underserved communities. I want to build a network of first responders, teach people how to save lives when help isn't coming fast enough." Daniel glanced at the folder but didn't touch it. Rachel kept talking. "I need someone to design the training programs, someone who knows what they're doing, someone who's been in the field, someone like you." Daniel looked up at her. "I'm not interested." Rachel's voice sharpened. "Why not?" Daniel gestured toward Zoe. "Because I have a daughter, and I don't want her growing up with a dad who's never home." Rachel's expression softened. "You wouldn't have to be. This isn't full-time, it's consulting. You design the curriculum, train the trainers, then you step back. You'd still have time for her." Daniel didn't answer. Rachel stood. "Just think about it, please." She left the folder on the table and walked to the door. She looked back at him one more time. "You're right, what's done is done, but that doesn't mean we can't do something good with it." She left. Daniel sat there for a long time, staring at the folder. Zoe came over and climbed into his lap. She looked at the folder too. "What's that?" Daniel wrapped his arms around her. "I don't know yet." That night after Zoe went to bed, Daniel opened the folder. Inside were blueprints for a training center, a proposed curriculum, a list of cities without adequate emergency services, and a handwritten note from Rachel. "You taught me what it means to save a life. Let me help you teach others." Daniel closed the folder, but he didn't throw it away. 11 months later, the Rivers Community Response Center opened its doors. It was a 2-story building on the west side of the city, funded by donations from across the state. Inside were training rooms, simulation labs, and a wall covered in photos of people who'd completed the program. Over 1,800 volunteers had been trained. 29 lives had been saved because of what they learned. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was packed. Local officials, press, families who'd lost loved ones, families who'd been saved. Zoe stood next to Daniel, holding his hand. She wore a purple dress. Her hair was styled in beautiful cornrows with silver beads that clicked softly when she moved. Rachel stood at the podium. "This center exists because one man knew how to act when no one else could. Daniel Rivers didn't ask for recognition. He didn't ask for anything, but he gave everything when it mattered most." She looked over at him. "And now, because of him, thousands of others will be able to do the same." The crowd applauded. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Zoe squeezed his hand. Rachel gestured toward the microphone. "Daniel, would you like to say a few words?" He hesitated, then he walked up to the podium. The crowd went quiet. He looked out at them, faces he didn't know, people who were here because of something he'd done. He cleared his throat. "I'm not good with speeches. I'm better with heartbeats." A few people laughed. He glanced at Zoe. She was watching him with wide eyes. "I didn't do any of this for recognition. I did it because someone needed help. That's all. And if I can teach one person how to do the same, then maybe the next time someone's lying on the ground, scared and bleeding, they won't have to wait for a hero, because the person next to them will already know what to do." He stepped back. The applause was louder this time. After the ceremony, Daniel stood outside with Zoe. Rachel joined them. She looked at the building. "We did it." Daniel nodded. "You did it." Rachel shook her head. "No, we did." Zoe tugged on Daniel's sleeve, her beads clicking musically. "Daddy, can we go get pizza now?" Daniel smiled. "Yes, baby girl, we can go get pizza." Rachel looked at them. Something soft crossed her face. "Can I come?" Daniel glanced at Zoe. She nodded. "Okay." They walked to the parking lot together. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the pavement. Zoe skipped ahead, humming to herself, her beads clicking a cheerful rhythm. Rachel walked beside Daniel. "Thank you." Daniel looked at her. "For what?" She smiled. "For not giving up on me." Daniel didn't answer, but he didn't need to. They got in the car and drove toward the pizza place. Zoe talked the whole way, telling Rachel about school and her art project and the new book she was reading. Rachel listened. And for the first time in years, she felt like she belonged somewhere. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment below. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Stories like this remind us that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear uniforms no one notices. Until the moment everything changes. Thank you for watching.